At 8,611 meters, K2 is the deadliest of the giants, where for decades 1 in 4 climbers who reached its summit never made it down. Unlike Everest, this mountain offers no easy line, no predictable weather, and no second chances. Why does this unforgiving peak take so many lives, even from the world's best? The answer begins with the very shape of the mountain itself. In 1856, British surveyors stood on a remote ridge of the Karakoram and recorded a peak so stark and isolated they gave it a simple code, K2. Unlike Everest, which locals called Chomolungma or Sagarmatha, K2 never gained a native name that stuck. Its identity remained as spare as its slopes, just the second mountain in a range where nothing came easy. For nearly a century, climbers studied its icy ramparts and steep faces from afar, each attempt beaten back by storms or stone. The first men to reach K2's summit were Italians, Achille Compagnoni and Lino Lacedelli on July 31, 1954. The expedition, led by Ardito Desio, was hailed as a triumph, but the cost was immediate and personal. Walter Bonatti, tasked with carrying oxygen to the final camp, was left stranded with Amir Mahdi at over 8,000 meters, without shelter, exposed to the wind and cold. Bonatti's diary describes a night spent clinging to life, fingers frozen, as the summit team pressed on above. The official reports glossed over the ordeal, but the details surfaced in letters and interviews for decades, raising questions of trust, of survival, of what is owed to a teammate when the air runs thin. From its very first conquest, K2 demanded not just strength, but choices under pressure that would echo through mountaineering history. The mountain's reputation was forged not only in altitude and ice, but in the moral fractures left behind. The Abruzzi Spur rises from K2's base in an unbroken sweep, 45 degrees of rock and ice, with no gentle ramps or forgiving shelves. Above 8,000 meters, the route narrows to the bottleneck, a couloir that angles up to 60 degrees, forcing every climber to traverse beneath a ceiling of unstable seracs. These ice cliffs, the size of buildings, hang directly overhead, shifting in silence and collapsing without warning. The bottleneck itself is barely wide enough for 2 people to pass. Climbers must cross a 100-meter stretch, exposed on both sides, with the knowledge that a single serac fall could sweep the entire line off the mountain in seconds. Unlike Everest, where broad slopes and alternate routes offer margin for error, K2's geometry leaves no escape. The mountain's fatality rate tells the story. Historically, 1 out of every 4 who reached the summit would die on the way down, a stark contrast to Everest's modern death rate of just 1 to 2%. On K2, the difference is structural. The bottleneck stands as a non-negotiable barrier, where every step upward is a bet against gravity, time, and the mountain's own shifting ice. Here, the climb is not just a test of skill, but a confrontation with a natural architecture designed to punish hesitation and to reward only the lucky and the strong. Above 8,000 meters, the human body enters a zone where survival can be measured in hours, not days. Oxygen levels fall to a third of what they are at sea level. Each breath delivers so little to the bloodstream that even simple actions, clipping a carabiner or tying a knot, become deliberate and slow. The brain, starved of oxygen, begins to misfire. Judgment slips, memory blurs. In medical studies, cognitive function can start to fail within just 2 hours at these altitudes, especially during exertion. Muscles, already drained by the climb, switch from burning sugar to breaking themselves down for fuel. Lactic acid builds up. Steps grow heavy, and balance falters. On K2, descent is not the relief it seems. The summit push often takes 12 to 18 hours, leaving climbers with little reserve for the return. As the body cools, blood flow retreats from fingers and toes, risking frostbite within an hour in the wind. Supplemental oxygen, if used, runs low or freezes in the lines. Once it is gone, the risk of high-altitude cerebral edema, swelling of the brain, rises sharply. Symptoms can escalate from confusion to hallucinations, then coma, in less than 6 hours. There is no safe margin. Every extra minute above 8,000 meters increases the odds of collapse. Medical teams tracking these climbs note that after 10 hours in the death zone, the chance of irreversible damage or death rises steeply. The clock starts at the summit, but it does not stop until climbers reach safer air. On K2, the margin for error is measured in heartbeats. Summit day on K2 now looks very different from the isolated pushes of the past. In July 2022, 145 climbers reached the top in a single 24-hour window, more than double the total from just a few years earlier. The surge comes from a wave of commercial expeditions where permit numbers and client lists grow each season. Operators promise the ultimate prize, but the logistics behind these climbs strain the system to its limits. At the bottleneck, the narrowest section above 8,000 meters, fixed ropes become a lifeline and a choke point. Climbers queue for hours in the death zone, waiting their turn to cross beneath the hanging seracs. Any delay, whether from a slow team, a jammed carabiner, or an equipment snag, burns precious minutes of survival. Nirmal Purja, a mountaineer known for rapid, coordinated ascents, has described the need for military-style logistics. Every step, every rope, every oxygen bottle must be planned to the minute. Even so, he warns, the mountain's margin for error is measured in seconds, not hours. Behind the scenes, the burden falls heavily on high-altitude porters. Sajid Sadpara, son of the legendary climber Ali Sadpara, has spoken about the invisible labor that supports these record-breaking days. Porters carry loads to Camp 4, fix ropes through the bottleneck, and often linger in exposed positions long after clients have passed. Their work is essential, but their risks are multiplied by crowding and the relentless pace set by commercial deadlines. The economics of K2's new era mean more people in the death zone, more time spent waiting in line, and more chances for a small delay to spiral into disaster. When the clock runs out on K2, it is rarely a single climber who pays the price. The entire system bends under the weight of human ambition, and sometimes it breaks. By 2 a.m. on August 1st, 2008, the summit push on K2 had already begun to unravel. Climbers gathered at the base of the bottleneck, but the fixed ropes, essential for safe passage through the steep couloir, were not yet in place. Radio chatter crackled with confusion. Teams waited in the darkness as high-altitude porters, exhausted from the climb to Camp 4, struggled to secure lines on the exposed ice. The queue grew, bodies pressed together on a ledge barely wide enough for a single file. Minutes stretched into hours. Some climbers reported waiting more than 2 hours at over 8,200 meters, burning through precious oxygen and energy while the wind cut through their downsuits. Alan Arnett, tracking the event from base camp, noted in his dispatches that the rope fixing delay was the first domino. Each hour lost in the death zone increased the risk of frostbite, confusion, and sudden weather shifts. As the sun rose, the mountain's most dangerous section remained jammed with climbers, all dependent on a single unfinished lifeline. Night on K2 above 8,000 meters is a test of endurance that strips away even the illusion of safety. As darkness closed in after the chaos at the bottleneck, climbers scattered across the slope, some injured, some lost, and many already out of oxygen. Batteries drained by the cold rendered headlamps useless, plunging survivors into blackness with only the faint outline of rope or a distant voice for orientation. Radio calls crackled through the static, brief, desperate, and often the last contact anyone would hear. Gerd McDonald's voice reassured Basecamp that he was assisting others, while the Korean team reported failing lights and worsening conditions. By midnight, transmissions fell silent one by one. The mountain offered no answers. Those still moving felt their way down by memory and touch. Others bivouacked in the open, frostbite setting in, hallucinations blurring the line between hope and resignation. By morning, several climbers remained unaccounted for, their fates unknown to those waiting below. The ordeal was not over. K2 would keep its secrets until dawn. Today, K2's fatality rate remains among the highest of any major peak, despite all modern advances. As more climbers attempt its slopes, the margin for error narrows. The mountain does not adapt, only those who face it must. On K2, ambition is measured in survival. Share your thoughts below.